Hello, welcome everyone to our third and final installment of our three-part Fall Wellness webinar series. I'm Larissa Bedrick. I am the Communications Director for the American Heart Association here in Central PA. And on behalf of our entire team, thank you for joining us today. I hope you'll be able to use some of the information that you gained today from today's session and even maybe share with some others who weren't able to join us today. If you use social media, of course, you can also share some of what you learned there too. Feel free to tag us. We are at AHA Pennsylvania on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can follow us to stay up to date on some other happenings in our region, particularly as we go into 2022 and Heart Month in February. So our wellness series here today and sort of our three-part wellness series has been supported by several generous sponsors, including UPMC, Encompass Health, Traditions Bank, Visiting Angels of York, and the Markets at Hanover. And we thank them for allowing us to bring this event to you today and for supporting our mission in York County and beyond. And we're here today to talk about healthy foods for fall and, of course, going into the holiday season. So it's perfect timing for that. And I hope we can all come away from today with a little festive food inspiration from our speaker today, which is Denise Stam, who is registered dietitian at UPMC Hanover. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you very much. Would you like me to get started by sharing my screen? Okay. Let me backtrack. Can you see my screen okay? All right.
Yes, I can see.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And I'm hoping that today we can really talk a little bit more about healthy foods for fall as we finish up the summer and go into fall. We often think that there maybe isn't as many things out there from a fruit and vegetable standpoint that we could utilize in our meals and snacks. So hopefully after today's session, you'll come away with maybe some things you hadn't thought of and maybe some preparation methods for these things that are new to you. So as we talk about those things that are available in the fall, I want to highlight a couple of the fruits that we tend to see more in the fall and winter months. This is not an all-inclusive list, but these are maybe some of the things that are more common in our meals and snacks. So pears, apples, citrus. So those are the three that I'm going to focus on this afternoon. So when we talk about the first one, which is pears, there's a lot of different types of pears that are out there, but to put it in a nutritional standpoint, we're looking at a pear which is about 166 grams. So kind of think of 30 grams equals an ounce. It's a very nutrient dense food, meaning it has a lot of nutrition for not a whole lot of calories. So a pear on average has about 100 calories, so a great amount of calories for a mid-meal snack or part of a meal. So the pear is something that we can really utilize pretty frequently for our meals and snacks. As far as storage, if the pears are ripe, they can be used right away. You can also refrigerate your pears in order to keep them at that ripe stage. However, if your pear is not ripe, you can put it in a paper bag to help them ripen faster. The big thing with doing this is be aware that you want to check these pears pretty much on the daily just to make sure that they don't get too ripe for you. Some great ideas for pears, of course, just have a pear by itself or pair it with a handful of nuts. And I know last time I spoke, we really focused a lot on those healthy fats. So things like pairing your pear, so to speak, with walnuts or cashews or peanuts would give you the great nutrition from the pear in addition to adding a heart-healthy snack. The same thing goes true with enjoying a pear for breakfast. A great idea for that would be a piece of whole grain bread or toast, which would have a lot of fiber in it. Spreading that with cashew butter for your healthy fat, and then topping it with pear slices. So that's a nice way to get a little bit of a different twist on your typical breakfast. If you're an oatmeal eater for breakfast, adding some diced pears would be a great addition to that bowl of oatmeal, along with a dash of cinnamon. You can also roast pears and sprinkle them with ginger or a little bit of brown sugar. Charcuterie boards are really very popular. So those are the boards that you see with the nice displays of fruits and meats and cheeses, but adding some pears to them can really add a new idea to that type of entertainment style. If you like Greek yogurt, you can add your pears to Greek yogurt. Again, adding those healthy nuts, those chopped walnuts. We also talked a little bit about some of the seeds. Things like flaxseed would give you that heart-healthy monounsaturated fat, so that will also help to increase the nutrition of that chopped pear with the Greek yogurt. Can also add some pears and chopped dates with some blue cheese for a nice appetizer. If you're trying to think of, okay, what can I bring to that holiday party that's a little bit unique, that would be a great idea. We like to have salads as a lunch or part of the evening meal, and adding some chopped pears to an arugula or spinach salad with some dried cherries or cranberries can make a different type of salad. And of course, if some of those pears do get too ripe, you can use them in a sauce over either pork or chicken. That would be a great addition to that type of lean meat, which again, from a heart health standpoint, a pork tenderloin or chicken without the skin is going to give you a great source of protein without a lot of added saturated fat. So these are some great ideas for pears, other than just having a pear for a snack. As far as, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty. There we go. There's lots of resources out there for recipes, but there is a website devoted entirely to pears, and that's usapear.org. That has over 400 pear recipes. So if you need some ideas for your pears, this would be the place to head. Most of us are really, really familiar with apples because Pennsylvania is ranked 4th in apple growing in the United States. So we produce a lot of apples in this state. We have entire festivals devoted to apples. And apples really do have a great nutritional profile. So a medium apple has about 27.6 grams of carbohydrate, or to kind of round it off, about 30 grams of carbohydrate. The big thing about apples is they're packed with fiber. There's a lot of fiber in an apple, almost 5 grams. Eating the skin on the apple is a great way to get all the fiber goodness of that apple. I think most of us are aware that apples do keep for quite a long time. So if you're storing them at room temperature, of course, they're going to last a bit shorter, about 1 to 2 weeks. But if you refrigerate your apples, we're looking at about a 1 to 2 month time frame. So that's like something good to stock up. It will last a long time in the refrigerator. However, you may want to avoid washing your apples until you're ready to use them. But when you do eat your apples, just make sure you wash them well under running water to remove any of the waxes or pesticides that might be on there. One of the things that people always are concerned about is how can I keep my apple from browning? So that's kind of an oxidative reaction that the apple flesh gets when it's exposed to air. So lightly coating them in lemon juice can prevent this oxidation. So help to make those apples look nice and bright like we would like them to be. A lot of great apple ideas as well. Apples are similar to pears as far as texture. So a lot of the things that I mentioned with pears can easily be translated into the apple. So apples are great just as they are, as a between meal snack or part of a meal. They hold up well in travel. So if you're packing lunches for somebody, putting an apple in their lunchbox, or if you're doing traveling over the holiday season, which I know many of us are, going out and about, whether it's a car trip or another type of trip to friends, relatives, or even a day out shopping, packing an apple can be a quick, easy snack that doesn't require refrigeration and isn't going to get really banged up as maybe some other fruits would. Of course, you can also have that apple with your oatmeal, like we mentioned with the pear. Also, apples work nicely in a bake situation. So you can, of course, bake them in the oven, or you could use your microwave to soften that apple to make it more like a baked apple consistency. Topping that baked apple with some cinnamon or nutmeg can give it a nice holiday feel. Of course, applesauce, can't go wrong with that. It's a good way to, again, get some more fruit into your diet. And just like with the pears, there's a whole entire website devoted to apples and apple recipes, and that's appleusa.com. So I think you'll be able to find some new ways to use apples on that website. Remember, you can always add apples to salads. You can add apples to main dishes as well. So a lot of ways to use apples. Our next fruit that we're going to talk about is citrus fruit. And even though citrus fruit is available all year round, the peak season for oranges and grapefruits in our northern hemisphere is between mid-December and April. And obviously we know Pennsylvania is not a big citrus state, but they're going to be very prevalent in our area, especially during this time frame. Because there's so many different varieties of citrus, I really wanted to just focus on one of them that we tend to see very much at the holiday season. But overall, citrus is really a great source of vitamin C. And keep in mind, vitamin C is that vitamin or that nutrient. We might even want to call it a micronutrient, meaning it's a nutrient that we need in small amounts, but it is really very important in overall health. So what vitamin C will do for us, it's a nutrient that strengthens our immune system. And we know having a strong immunity is really important right now in this time that we're living in. So not only does it help your immune system, but it also helps with your skin. So makes your skin heal better, keeps your skin smooth, all those kind of great health benefits. And believe it or not, one medium orange has all the vitamin C that you need for the whole entire day. So having an orange, part of a grapefruit, if you're able to have that with, depending on the medication that you're having, that really helps to ensure that you're getting a lot of vitamin C in your diet. Citrus fruit, also a great source of fiber. Just one orange a day, or 1 cup of orange segments, depending on the size of your orange, has about 4 grams of fiber. And fiber, certainly, we've talked a lot about fiber in our last presentation, but that is definitely a nutrient that many people are not getting enough of. The citrus that really comes to mind to me during this holiday season is the Clementine. So the Clementine, you might have heard of it as the nickname of the Christmas orange, and basically because the season is really very short and typically peaks around the holidays. So a Clementine really is a cross between a mandarin orange and a sweet orange. And one of the reasons I think they're so popular is they're very easy to peel and almost always seedless. So from a convenience standpoint, the Clementine really checks a lot of the boxes that we're looking for. It's, again, a good between meal snack. It travels well, so good for when you're packing lunch boxes or traveling. So I think the Clementine is a good way to go when we're talking about citrus and to really enjoy it during this small, short growing season that it has. So we've talked about several fruit. Of course, there's other fruit that are more prevalent in the winter season. We often think of cranberries. So utilizing cranberries in cooking or in sauces. But we're going to change gears and talk about vegetables. And vegetables are definitely an important part of the diet. Two of the root vegetables that I want to focus on are sweet potatoes and winter squash. I think sometimes we think about sweet potatoes only in the sweet potato casserole that we might have for Thanksgiving, but there's a lot of other uses for sweet potato. And sweet potatoes also, from a nutritional standpoint, pack a very powerful punch. So as we look at sweet potatoes, one large sweet potato, about 6 ounces, has about 160 calories, 4 grams of protein, 37 grams of carbohydrate, and just a little bit of fat. When we're looking at fiber, fiber is really very prevalent in a sweet potato. There's about 4 grams of fiber. Sweet potatoes are a great source of vitamin C, vitamin A, and potassium. Potassium is really an important mineral for good blood pressure control. So of course, reducing the sodium in the diet and increasing the potassium is a good way to help keep your blood pressure under control. One of the questions that I'm often asked is the difference between the nutrition in a white potato and a sweet potato. Which one is better? Even though they both contain roughly around the same number of carbohydrates for the same amount, the place where the sweet potato squeaks ahead of the white potato is in the fiber. There's slightly more fiber in a sweet potato versus a white potato. And also the vitamin A is a lot higher in a sweet potato. So no need to avoid a white potato, but a sweet potato is really going to have a lot of nutrition in it. Sweet potatoes are highly versatile as well. So they can be boiled or baked, roasted, grilled, whipped, pureed, even fried. I know sweet potato fries are very popular. For those of you with an air fryer, I think utilizing that piece of equipment to make your sweet potato fries would be a good way to limit the added fat on the sweet potato. Sweet potatoes are really very versatile too from a flavor standpoint. They can either be made into more of a sweeter type dish by adding things like nutmeg and cinnamon and ginger, but they can also be more savory if you add something spicy like a chili powder or a paprika. So think about sweet potato in chilies, but also think about sweet potatoes in muffins and breads. The big thing you want to remember about sweet potatoes is even though they may look like they're clean when you get them, remember that sweet potatoes do grow in the ground. So of course, no matter how you're going to make that sweet potato, make sure that it is really cleaned well. As far as storage, Keeping them in a cool, dry environment will help that sweet potato stay fresh longer. Avoid refrigerating your sweet potatoes after you purchase them. So again, keep them more in a cool, dry place. Just like we talked about eating the skin on the apple and the pear, if the skin looks good and of course it is edible, it's a great way to get a little bit more fiber in your day. Winter squash, there's a lot of types of winter squash out there. So I have a list here for you. Some of these we may be more familiar with than others. So we have an acorn squash, we have a banana squash, a buttercup squash, a butternut squash, a carnival squash, a delicata squash, a Hubbard squash, ciabatta squash, a spaghetti squash, sugar pumpkin, which there's where a lot of people are using that when they're making their pies, and a turban squash. Some of the ones that I think many people are very familiar with is the spaghetti squash. And pretty much as the name suggests, the spaghetti squash cooks into spaghetti-like strands. And as people are maybe trying to avoid gluten, maybe for a particular health concern, that would be a great way to enjoy pasta. If you're also trying to decrease your carbohydrate intake, using spaghetti squash instead of a wheat squash could also help to reduce your carbohydrate intake. So I think the spaghetti squash, I do see a lot of people utilizing spaghetti squash in their preparation. So spaghetti squash, of course, you can top that with your marinara and your Parmesan cheese and have a very great tasting dish that is made from a vegetable base. When we're talking about winter squash, it really does depend on the variety, but for the most part, that squash is gonna run about 60 calories per cup and have about 16 grams of carbohydrate. For the butternut squash, whereas the spaghetti squash is going to be a bit lower from a calorie and a carbohydrate standpoint, about 30 calories per cup and about 7 grams of carbohydrate. Also, just like all other vegetables, virtually fat-free, and all types of vegetables have a lot of fiber. So this is a good way to get some added fiber and nutrition into your diet. The big difference between summer squash and winter squash is winter squash has a denser texture and flavor. So it holds up a lot better in hearty soups, stews, casseroles, breads, and desserts. Because that skin is denser and firmer, that's where sometimes the struggle is. It's in preparing the squash. So it may be a little bit challenging to cut. So some tips for that is to use the biggest and sharpest knife that you have. Serrated knives don't seem to work as well. So you may not want to utilize that type of knife for preparation. Sometimes people also find if you microwave that squash, it does help to soften it and make it a little bit easier to cut or to peel. So keep those tips in mind when you're preparing your squash. So when you're choosing your squash, try to pick one that has a firm exterior with no soft spots. Unlike some fruits that develop a softer exterior as they ripen, squash actually, the rind becomes even firmer as they mature. So again, because of that, that's why sometimes it's a little bit more challenging to cut them. But the skin should be more matte. and not shiny and hard to pierce with your fingernail. So if it is shiny or soft, it might indicate that the squash is not quite ripe. A squash with soft areas or a moldy stem is probably well past its prime. This is one of those type fruits or rather vegetables that you can do the tap test. Knock on the skin with your knuckle. If it sounds hollow, it's ripe. If it sounds dull, it may not be ripe or may be spoiled. If you do buy a squash that's not quite ripe, you can help it along in its ripeness with putting it in a warm and sunny spot. So plenty of sunlight is really the key here. If it's mature and ripe, then store that squash in a cool, dark place in your kitchen. But again, don't refrigerate it. Squash, just like we talked about some of our other fall fruits and vegetables, they really do last a fair amount of time if you're putting them in the right conditions. So it's best though, however, to use them in about a month's time for the best flavor. So we've really covered several of our root vegetables. Let's change gears and talk a little bit about our cruciferous vegetables. So things like broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts would be some of the three main cruciferous vegetables that would be a healthy fall item to choose from. I found some fun facts here about broccoli. So broccoli basically is a member of the cruciferous vegetable family. It's related to cabbage, kale, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. Broccoli is high in many nutrients, including fiber, vitamin C, vitamin K, iron, and potassium. We're talking about broccoli because it's a cold weather crop and harvested both in the fall and the spring. As we look at some of the history about broccoli, Italian immigrants first introduced broccoli to the United States in the 1800s. However, it did not become widely known until about the 1920s. And I think broccoli really, even since that time, has picked up in popularity. When I talk to people about the vegetables that they like, a lot of times I do hear broccoli. So I think there's a lot of people that include broccoli in their vegetable choices. The word broccoli comes from the Italian word, and I know I won't say it correctly, so you can read it there on the screen, which means the flowering top of a cabbage. So some background as far as how broccoli was introduced to all of us. So from a nutrition standpoint, we're looking at a cup of raw chopped broccoli contains about 30 calories, so very, very low in calories. It does have a little bit of carbohydrates, about 6 grams. We do in the diabetic exchange system or the diabetic choose your food type system, we do find broccoli to be on that non-starchy vegetable list. So it's a good choice from a filling standpoint, has a lot of good nutrients, and we do consider it very much a heart healthy food. It's a great source again of that vitamin C. Talked about the immunity that vitamin C helps. Also a good source of vitamin K, B vitamins, folate, also vitamin A and potassium. So when you're choosing broccoli, really look at the color. Broccoli that's bright green is going to give you a lot more flavor, a lot more nutrition. Avoid purchasing broccoli with yellow flowers. That might mean it's gone past the stage of desirable texture. However, if the broccoli has flowered, it might work well if you're doing a soup or maybe making a vegetable stock. Choose those clusters, those heads of broccoli rather, that have compact clusters. So kind of looking at that can also help you pick a broccoli that is going to be a little bit more enjoyable. Broccoli, again, really easy to prepare. Just steaming broccoli probably is a very quick way to do that. You can use a basket in a pot of boiling water, or use your microwave to steam broccoli. You can also roast broccoli, stir fry broccoli, or just eat them raw with some dip. If you're trying to, again, include more vegetables in your diet, putting in some broccoli florets while you're cooking your whole grain pasta, and that few final minutes of cooking the pasta can add a lot more nutrition to a pasta meal rather. Pureeing broccoli in soups. You can also do like a slaw with broccoli, and this is a really good way to use the stems of broccoli. I thought this idea of making a pesto with broccoli is a really fun idea and a different twist on your traditional pesto, which is made with basil. So using those steamed broccoli florets and stems in place of basil, or when you're making some pesto. You can also, of course, use broccoli raw in salads. However, changing it up a little bit and using a roasted broccoli in your salad may also be a new way to incorporate broccoli in your diet. The other vegetable I want to talk about is cauliflower, and cauliflower and broccoli very closely related. Again, part of that same cruciferous family of vegetables. 1 cup of cauliflower provides about 25 calories, 2 grams of protein, about 5 grams of carbohydrate. Again, when we're talking about blood sugar control, this would be considered a non-starchy vegetable, meaning it's a very low carbohydrate vegetable. Cauliflower is also a great source of vitamin C, B6, and magnesium. So a lot of great nutritional value in a small amount of food. Again, making it what we call a nutrient-dense food. Cauliflower is, again, super versatile, just like all the other things that we talked about. Of course, eating it raw, doesn't really take any preparation at all. You can dip it in hummus, and I know we've talked about beans in our last presentation about beans being a good source of protein. So hummus being those mashed up garbanzo beans or chickpeas with some healthy oil like an olive oil. So that's a great way to enjoy your cauliflower with some hummus. Cauliflower can also be roasted or sauteed, makes a great side dish. A lot of people are enjoying riced cauliflower as an alternative to rice if they're trying to reduce their carbohydrate intake. So cauliflower, extremely versatile, and I think we're seeing it more in a lot of products. The last cruciferous vegetable we want to talk about is Brussels sprouts. And these are the ones that a lot of times people think of as kind of a baby cabbage or a miniature cabbage. So the place that Brussels sprouts got their names actually was from Brussels, Belgium. So that's why we call them Brussels sprouts. A cup of boiled Brussels sprouts has about 56 calories, 4 grams of protein, 11 grams of carbohydrate, and just a trace of fat. Just like the broccoli and the cauliflower, Brussels sprouts would be considered, again, a non-starchy vegetable from a blood sugar control standpoint. Brussels sprouts are a great source of fiber, vitamin C, vitamin K. When you're choosing Brussels sprouts, look for ones that are green, round in shape, and firm to the touch. This is the same whether they're attached to the stalk or in individual sprouts. Typically, the smaller the sprout, the sweeter they are, especially if you're steaming or boiling them. Think of the larger Brussels sprouts as a better choice if you're going to grill or braise or roast your Brussels sprouts. Avoid sprouts with yellowing leaves, blemishes, or mushiness. A lot of different ways to make Brussels sprouts. So boiling your Brussels sprouts is probably the quickest and easiest way. So placing Brussels sprouts in boiling water and cooking them for 10 to 15 minutes would be your time frame there. Cook them until they're tender, and when they're ready, you should be able to stick a fork into them easily. Sauteed Brussels sprouts, again, another way to do Brussels sprouts. Typically, if you're sauteing a Brussels sprout, you may want to cut it up a little bit smaller. So maybe cutting the Brussels sprout in half and then taking that half and making some slices into it. Roasting Brussels sprouts really helps to bring out a lot of flavor, the caramelization. A lot of times people find helps with maybe some of the bitter compounds that many people find in Brussels sprouts. So a lot of great ways to incorporate those into your diet as well. There's so many places out there if you're really wanting specific recipes for vegetables and fruits that are available in the fall. One of the great recipe resources is the American Heart Association. Under the Healthy Living tab, you'll find a lot of great recipes, not only for fall fruits and vegetables like we talked about, but just great recipes in general. Eatright.org, which is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They have several recipes on their website as well that might be worth exploring. And then another site called eatingwell.com has a lot of recipes for these fruits and vegetables that we talked about as well. And why would we want to incorporate so much fruit and vegetable in our diet for heart health? Well, first of all, they are high in fiber. So all the ones that we talked about really provide a lot of fiber in the diet. And when we're looking at amounts of fiber, we're looking at about 25 to 35 grams of fiber every day. So fiber helps us to fill up. Fiber also helps to reduce blood cholesterol level, also helps with blood sugar levels. Fruits and vegetables are naturally fat-free, so they're not going to have a lot of the fats that may be harmful to heart health. Fruits and vegetables contain a lot of antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, and they're also naturally low in sodium. So when we look at how much do we need, from the MyPlate recommendation for men, we're looking at about 2.5 to 4 cups a day for vegetables, depending on age range. For ladies, for vegetables, again, looking at about that amount, and fruits, we're looking at about 2 to 2.5 cups per day. So trying to, again, get half of your plate fruits and vegetables is a good way to use your plate as a way to help your diet be as healthy as it can. So we've covered a lot of ground here today. So we'll take some time for questions. And I think there may be, somebody responded for, if you didn't see this in the chat, check out that broccoli pesto pasta. And there's a YouTube video for that one. So thank you for that, Larissa. So check that out. That looks really like a fun recipe to get those Brussels sprouts or that broccoli in there, like we talked about with that suggestion. So thank you for that. Is there any other questions out there today?
I haven't seen any in the chat, but anybody who is on who would like to, feel free to go ahead and type in the chat. And we'll get that answered. Or if you have a question after the fact, feel free to reach out to us. We can certainly get back to you with answers. But yes, you're right. As soon as you mentioned that broccoli pesto, I immediately thought, I know actually one of your fellow dietitians, Erica,
Yes.
from UPMC, had done a video of that recipe for us for an American Heart Association event. So
Excellent.
I thought immediately of that. So I immediately went and found the link to that video, because it was a great recipe.
Yeah, so check that out, everybody. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
While I have a question, so while I was looking for that link, you were talking about cauliflower. So I may have missed it if you mentioned it, but I had a question too about, I know I've going to local farmers markets and stores recently. You see there's your regular cauliflower, and I've seen a lot of the sort of the very colorful cauliflower, some like the yellow or the purple cauliflowers. Is there any sort of nutritional difference or anything between those, or is it strictly just
I don't think that there's enough difference nutritionally, like from a vitamin and mineral standpoint, but again, has all those great properties as a white cauliflower. I think kind of mixing it up makes it a little bit more festive and fun, especially as we go into the holidays. So having a lot more color for that for the cauliflower rather. Good question.
Yeah, so I picked up some purple cauliflower one time, and then I sat there staring at it like, is there something special I should do with it because it's purple as opposed to just regular cauliflower? No, I just made a regular cauliflower recipe, and it was delicious.
It was fine. Yes.
It was fine. Just a little bit different because of the color. But these were fantastic tips. And another really great tip I got from you, which I'm so glad I did. Peeling butternut squash has always been a challenge for me. The minute you start peeling it and you're turning it, it gets slippery.
Right.
The very hard peel and a very slippery butternut squash as you're peeling it. So you mentioned possibly put it in the microwave might help soften it up, make it a little bit easier. So I will use that tip next time.
Yes, and when I process my pumpkin for our traditional pumpkin pie, that's how I peel it, because it is challenging to peel when it's not heated a little bit. So that kind of softens it up a little bit.
Yeah, that was an excellent tip. Thank you so much. So if I don't see any other questions, we can wrap this up for today. But I thank you so much, Denise, for everything that you shared with us today. And thank everybody for joining us. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us afterward. We'll be happy to try to get answers for you. But hopefully you did take away some good tips for today. I know I did. That might make some of your holiday cooking a little bit easier and give you some new ideas. And we will be, if you missed, because there's so much information that Denise presented for us today, we'll be posting a recording of this session to our American Heart Association Eastern States YouTube channel that you can reference later. So a final thank you to our sponsors, to UPMC, of course, Encompass Health, Traditions Bank, Visiting Angels of York, and the markets at Hanover. And also don't forget to follow us on social media at AHA Pennsylvania. There'll be more events and happenings. Of course, we're always posting, healthy tips and recipes ourselves as well. And so on behalf of all of us here at the American Heart Association, thank you so much for joining us. And we wish you a very happy and healthy holiday season. Take care. Have a good day, everybody.